Why does so much stuff happen when I leave for vacation, guys? This is an art contest that was hosted where two different artists entered this art contest with art pieces that were fully rendered and also really looked like AI. And people clocked them for it. And guess how both of these guys got caught? Almost in the same way. This is an absolute wild ride of a story, so strap in, grab your boba, and let's get started. So, the art contest is hosted by a brand called Tomorrow Coffee Indonesia. Basically, they had a free run collab thing that was happening, and now they are hosting an art contest asking people to make artwork of their brand and including free run. And this was the submission page for it, and it's no longer accepting responses. It ended May 30th. A note that they have for this contest is that they do not accept any works created with the assistance of AI in any form. Please note that. So people were posting their submissions to Twitter and other social media pages, and this is the submission that was posted by an artist named Sarah. It features Himmel, Freerin, and other members of their party on a TikTok live together in Tomorrow Coffee, featuring a whole bunch of desserts and them holding the partnered cups. And people basically took one immediate look at this and felt like this image looks AI generated, or at least AI assisted in some way. Some things that people were pointing out is the fact that Himmel has two different colored eyes, which on its own does not make sense because he doesn't have heterochromia. Secondly, there are again inconsistencies in the art piece, like fingernails on one character's hands and no fingernails on another character's hands. Also, the messy painting. And again, I want to add a bit disclaimer, right? Because just because you have a more messy paintery style doesn't mean you use AI. The account already looks suspicious because this was basically the first fully rendered art piece that was ever posted by this account. So people were already like, oh, well, I mean, you seem to have like an amazing art talent that you've never posted about before, which is fine, but it does bring an air of suspicion if there's no prior art history, no vision of development of like more beginner works. But the messiness doesn't add up with the piece because the piece is in an anime style with a bit more of semi-realistic rendering for aspects like hair and clothing. But then we have what is like a failed attempt at the lasso tool all around the head for the hair, which looks a bit odd because it doesn't match the proposed skill level that is being displayed here. And then we have even more inconsistencies, like regular ear here, and here she kind of looks like she has an earpiece in of some sort, which doesn't seem to match to the character. Another big one as well are the cups the characters are holding, because they're drawn very well, on paper here in this image, but if you look at the cup, this is a really chopped version of Fern. And if we look over here, this is also a really garbled version of Stark. This just looks kind of off. Here's an example of a user who is highlighting aspects of the clothing and the image that just look kind of odd. And Fern's soulless eyes, the heterochromia, which is not lore accurate. Freerin's earrings being completely off. Clothing details not matching the way the original clothing looks like on the character. So after there was some public discourse about the art piece looking pretty AI, the artist kind of came out and was like, oh, I made this myself, but I don't have a speed paint because I didn't record a speed paint when I drew this. But this was a meme that was just really funny. This person writes, why does every AI artist's work in progress always look like this? And it's like a meme drawing of a tree with some composite of images of trees on there, and nothing else is done, which I completely agree with. All the fake speed paints, they've all looked like that. But then the artist says this, which is really odd. So the artist says, I didn't even think of recording it to turn it into a speed paint like others do. Meanwhile, all I have is the video from when the SW, I think maybe software, update happened. So they have a video of themselves drawing on their laptop before a software update, which already is kind of odd because how convenient that you happen to have a video of you drawing on your laptop, but no full speed paint for us to see your drawing. But also you somehow have this right when there's an AI accusation that pops up. A bit interesting. But let's look at the speed paint because the speed paint is jaw dropping. So this is the speed paint where they're in their drawing program, which looks to be Paint Tool Sai, and they're applying brush strokes onto the character's hair, except Himmel's face and Himmel's hair is basically completely rendered at this point, but nothing else of this piece is rendered. They somehow, for some reason, only fully rendered in his head and no other part of the body. No other part of this image looks to be rendered in. So it's already pretty odd that that is what was recorded. And people again felt like the art process was really odd. People were making memes about like why AI artists basically only ever have like one head drawn in or one part fully rendered and nothing else is drawn. Again, just because you draw like this doesn't mean you use AI. If you see somebody with an art process like this, it doesn't initially just mean they use AI. There are some artists who just like rendering piece by piece and chunk by chunk. That's just what works for them. That's not really common. You won't find most artists rendering like this, but some people do it like that. But other parts of this that were flagging people's suspicion is again the way the artist is drawing, because everything is basically fully rendered and they're kind of just placing like random brushstrokes around the hair. It looks fake, for lack of a better way to explain it, right? It looks fake. It looks like they're just kind of trying their best to like paint things in. They're not zooming in, even though they're doing maybe finer details of the hair. They're just kind of color selecting, applying color selecting, applying color, which again is fine. But then people noticed this one aspect of the screen recording that broke everything apart. The commenter adds, of course, there are artists out there who paint like this, but you can tell which ones are genuine and which ones just blatantly cropped out an AI image. Anyways, I'm moving this by, which yeah, I agree with, right? Like there are legitimate artists who draw like this. And there are people like Sarah who is literally just cutting out an AI head and trying to fake their art process. But you're gonna be like, Kat, how do you know for certain? A user writes, if you're gonna lie, at least make it look neat. How is the file already completed in JPEG form? LOL, show the layers too. Which, by the way, did you also notice in the speed paint, we can't see the layers? How convenient that the layers are always cropped off. But right here on the very bottom, it is a JPEG. Now, I don't know what artists you know that work in JPEG, but I would probably bet that almost no artists that render at this level work in JPEG, because JPEG is just a compressed smaller file format. You want the working file. You would get like a .sci file, right? Or if you work in Photoshop, it'll be a .psd, but it's a working file format that when you open it, you have access to all of your layers. JPEGs and PNGs are flattened. There's only that one image. So if you're working on a full illustration in JPEG or PNG, you're basically like working with one hand tied behind your back for no reason. The only reason it would be in JPEG is if you're scamming somebody like this. And another person adds, if you're lying about using Paint Tool Sci, make a new canvas first so the format is .sci, okay? Don't use JPEG. That lie will be found out. And another person adds, who manually clicks the undo button when you could just use the macro button on your tablet? Which, I mean, not everybody knows that, but in case you didn't know, that person's using a drawing tablet and they had a tablet with extra buttons on it. You can bind keys and actions to those buttons, like an undo, etc. So you don't have to keep hitting undo on your keyboard. And other people also zoomed into the image and was like, wait, it looks like there's already an image under the line art that's overlapping it, but it's cropped. So you can kind of see here. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you see how sharp the cuts are around the hair? Like, something looks odd. So that was the first artist that was exposed for faking their art process using allegedly AI. They've now deleted their account, so they are completely gone. But there actually is a second one. And again, all this was happening when I was in Vancouver, which is kind of wild. I literally leave for 4 days for a Riftbound tournament, and then all this drops. So this is posted by an artist named Bland Levi. And they write, inspired by the healing journey atmosphere of Freerin, the evening sky, quiet moments, and a cup of warm coffee. So this is their illustration, also for the exact same art contest for Tomorrow Coffee. So again, we have Freerin, we have Fern, and we have Spark. I do think it's an interesting choice to leave Himmel out, who is like the other main character, but I mean, Himmel, I guess, is in the drawing back here, so. A lot of people in the comments also felt like this piece looks very AI. The biggest one, honestly, that people are pointing out is the fact that the logo is actually completely wrong. This is Tomorrow Coffee's logo. It features a pretty geometric looking cat with a triangle for a nose and a cutout of a coffee bean for the stomach. It's some pretty simple iconography. For some reason, in Levi's art piece, Tomorrow Coffee's logo is a leaf, which just is wrong. Now, you could assume, okay, maybe this person got the logo wrong, which again, if you're entering an art contest for this brand, wouldn't you want to get the logo correct? But secondly, they actually did get the logo correct, because in the background for the countertop, the counter actually has the correct logo. This is the cat here with like TOM and then, you know, what looks like coffee below it. So they know what the logo looks like because the correct one is actually in the art piece. But for some reason, everybody's aprons and everybody's mugs has the wrong logo. That is the biggest telltale, because the big question you really ask is, right, like, would a human do this? Would a human look at the logo, get it correct only for the countertop and get it completely wrong for every other aspect of this art piece. That's already odd. Again, we have core issues with the character elements, as in key details of the characters are wrong. Spark has bandages around their arms, and it's just not here. If you look at this image of Spark over here, Spark's clothing actually has 2 white collars per side. It's like a double collar, and in this drawing, Spark only has 1 collar on either side, not 2. So that is also wrong. Another core element of Stark's design is there's this wound on the forehead. That's also missing. So Stark's character design is actually completely wrong, which is, again, you know, if you're entering a contest, you would look up reference images for the characters you're drawing and then draw what you see. And then if we look closer at the image, there's, again, other elements that just look kind of odd. Fern is looking at nothing. So Fern is stirring in a cup, and typically, right, you would have the eyes look at, you know, what you're doing. Fern is not looking at the cup, but rather at literally the void, absolutely nothing. Freerin has 2 pigtails. The thing is, you can't even make the argument of like maybe this person didn't know, because literally it is drawn correctly in this picture back here. Where's the second pigtail? It is completely missing. She only has 1. I mean, benefit of doubt, maybe it was an artistic choice to give her a ponytail, but kind of highly doubt it. Another one that I thought was just kind of odd is this on the apron. Why is there like a beige triangle on the apron, but only Freerin's apron? Because we see just about as much of Fern's apron as we do Freerin's apron, but Fern doesn't have that same like triangle detailing on the bottom. Another element that's kind of weird, if we zoom into Freerin's serving hand, she's not actually making contact with the platter. Her palm is cut off. It somehow is cut right here, and there is a gap where you can see the sleeve and then you see the platter. But a big thing that people were pointing out were the highlights on Stark's head specifically, and how the highlights here are very, very messy and odd looking relative to the rendering of the rest of the piece, and that it just didn't seem to match up. So what does the artist have to say about all of this? Well, the artist first asked for people to provide more proof, and they insist that they did not use AI. They write, no need to be jealous already. So another person responds, highlighting a lot of elements of the piece that look very odd to them or very suspicious. You know, one being like random dots on the jackets, etc. And so the artist responds, at this point, I'm done. We can draw it with any shapes. Jackets have things like that, even mine does. It just repeats the line if it was the IRL one. I wanted to make the jacket short. They also add, human errors are just blatantly obvious here, so why blame AI? If it were a real artist or digital artist, they would definitely be able to tell the difference from all of this. Doesn't use airbrush at all. If it did, that would make it even more suspicious. Just check how minimal the quality of Krita's airbrush is. They also say if it was AI, the chibi photos would definitely all be rendered, and the frame wouldn't have any light reflections. Just try making it with AI, it would definitely look like that. The artist, again, has a lot to say. I didn't give the zipper on Freerin's jacket any shading because it's tough. No matter how much I think about it, my drawing of the jacket is already a total mess. I have to fix it first for it to make sense. The straw and stirrer was already wrong from the start. I even used my original photo to make it easier to draw, but it was still hard. That's why the result turned out messed up. The food in the lunch box, so this like case, next to Fern was intentionally not drawn. It's tough to do, and it's even less humane, especially the drawing part. They basically go on and on about the piece as to like what decisions they made and why it means it's not AI. What I do think is interesting though is they never address like key points that people had. They never address key points as in 1, the incorrect logo, or 2, the fact that Stark's character design is completely off, or why Fern is looking away. I mean, they highlight the fact the stirrer was difficult to draw. I would argue it's not, because it's just a straight line. I would argue, you know, like Freerin's hair here is difficult to draw. This pose that Freerin is holding is difficult to draw. The angle of Freerin holding that tray with desserts on it is difficult. The stirrer is, I feel like, the least of the concerns here. So then for some proof, the artist provides this work in progress. Somehow it is actually this meme all over again. Why does every AI artist work in progress look like this? And it's a sketch tree and boom, something fully rendered but only a small portion. Because it's a completely blank canvas, and we have the line art for Freerin's forehead, side of her face, eyes, nose, mouth, and 1 bang and an ear. And that's it. There's no sketch, no shape blocking, no rough sketch below this, no line art for other parts of the body or other characters, just that. And then we have the second work in progress, which again also is literally the same thing as the meme. We have a fully rendered Freerin, we have her holding the tray, and a counter, which also is weird because it literally isn't the same counter. Like the counter goes from the back of Freerin all the way across to the right end of the canvas. So what is this? This is not that. And then somehow they drew in a not rendered vase and one rendered flower, except there's supposed to be like, I don't know, 12 flowers here in the final image. And again, this is just what's odd, right? Because Freerun is fully rendered with environmental lighting already drawn in. I'm not saying you can't do that, but even like the seasoned professional artists, they will draw in the background after drawing the character and then do the environmental lighting afterwards to fully blend everything together. To immediately get all the environmental lighting on the first shot and be 100% correct is almost impossible. It's really hard to do. And again, even seasoned artists will manipulate at the end to blend everything seamlessly together. And for more context, again, this artist, this is their first illustration they've ever posted on their page. This is why people are also really suspicious. So now we have the next frame where now Fern is being drawn in. Note the environmental lighting already being drawn in. We have her face fully rendered, no eyes rendered though, and the flat color for the hair. No body, no sketch. There is no sketch. There's no line art. This artist is somehow drawing things where they immediately know it's gonna go here. Like you are either a god or you're cheating. And then we have less rendered version of Freerun. Like what is the bottom of the apron? Why is there this like triangle or this curvature in the apron? It's fine if it's part of the design, but Fern doesn't have that. So like the inconsistency is weird. But this doesn't make sense in terms of being like the cutout for the apron with it like a tulip cut on the bottom, because where are her clothing? Where's her dress that she wears beneath this? But yeah, now Fern is fully rendered with nothing else, with this weird like fencing thing drawn in. This again just looks so fake. And the artist has another work in progress for us to look at. This one here is a video actually, where they are showing all their layers. It looks like they're showing this to us on a tablet with like a screen behind them, where they're opening up their layers, where you can see we have Fern in one group. We can see all the layers. What I want to see is your sketch. I want to see the sketch, the base sketch, the 5 different sketches that had to be done to get from rough blocking to then get to this final render here. What I do think is a little bit interesting is in the layer for Freerun's side bang, only her left one, there is like a bajillion layers in here. And here we have layer 4. We don't ever see like a layers 1, 2, or 3. I'm just curious, like where's the sketch, you know? But people notice something. And a user writes, why is it JPEG? If it's not AI, it shouldn't have JPEG in the name. Because at the title, this will be like the working title, right? That you named your art file. And then it defaults, you know, the .jpeg, .png, .krita. It's for some reason .jpeg, .krita. That doesn't make sense. If you open an art file, a new canvas in your drawing program, again, be it Photoshop, Clipstudio Paint, whatever, it automatically makes you a file in the form of that drawing program. Again, if you do in Photoshop, it'll be a .psd. The only way you get .jpeg, .kra is if you are absolutely trolling and went into the name of your image and then you manually typed in .jpeg for some reason. Or the much more realistic outcome is that you yoinked a JPEG from the internet, opened it in Krita. That's how you then get the .jpeg at the end, right? And then you manually save it as a .kra. That's from, again, my understanding, how you would get that double at the end, .jpeg, .kra. And people were tagging the artist, being like, yo, give me an answer, essentially. And the artist wasn't responding at all to that. For some context, another user says the .jpeg, .kra thing can happen if you save a Krita file as a JPEG, then resave it as a Krita file. It's happened, but only rarely with work in progress stuff, never completed things. So OP probably knew they wanted to edit or prove this photo like this at some point, which is odd. Again, does this artist have examples of other work they've done? This artist actually does. They posted this drawing, basically writing my first art with a pen tablet. This shows how much I improved. And then people are like, yo, so why did you suddenly start posting your artwork? Suspicious. In which the artist says, oh, well, my friends were asking me to. And so the commenter says, okay, can you show some of your recent art on Krita? And so the artist then shows this drawing, being like, hey, this is an example. I drew this with my finger on Ibis Paint. And they say, oh, I don't know how to download the speed paint for it. And other people were like, okay, so you know how to copy a drawing because it is off this screen grab here, but it doesn't demonstrate your knowledge to actually create the Freerun illustration. Simply, you're giving me more reasons to believe you used AI. That's like a big one, right? Clearly this person can draw. Clearly this person has hands. That is obvious. I'm not saying their art is bad. They can draw. But this, and maybe it's an older piece like they said, it's not this. First off, the style is completely different. They're using an airbrush in that drawing and they don't use an airbrush tool here. Where again, they said it's because the Krita's airbrush tool sucks, which I do agree with. But this demonstrates a complex knowledge of complex poses, drawing in environments. And again, you're claiming that you are so good, you are able to draw in complex environmental lighting when the environment isn't even drawn in yet, something that even professional artists don't do. They would still need to waffle around a little bit. So you're this goated, able to do all of this really technical stuff with your art, but we haven't seen another piece that can match up to this alleged level. It's just odd. And even in this piece, by the way, look at Freeren's hand, man. Look at what's happening here. Like, you draw with this much environmental lighting, but you can't connect her palms together, her like wrist bones together so that her palm is actually holding the tray. I'm not buying it at all. Basically, on Twitter, this artist continues to double down, continues to insist that they actually drew this themselves, saying things like, oh, Krita doesn't have a speed paint program, which this got community noted because Krita does. For the logo, they finally answered that question, and they said that they used the leaf as a symbol, not a logo or an icon. That is the weirdest choice ever to make when, again, you are entering an art contest for a brand. I'm just gonna be honest. If you want to win, why would you change the logo? The brand is gonna look at it and be like, bro, this person doesn't know what they're doing. You're not gonna win like that. What are your thoughts, guys? But this is a situation where there's literally two people faking an art process for this coffee contest, and they got caught in the same way with a .jpeg. Both of them. Honestly, it sounds scripted and rage baity at this point. What are your thoughts on this entire thing, guys? Again, don't send hate to any parties involved, okay? This was just a funny story that I wanted to share with you guys because this is too coincidental for it just to be a fluke. And with that, if you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I was literally just in Vancouver for 4 days as part of Riftbound's regional tournament over there. I was invited by Riot as a creator, so I was very excited. Pulled a lot of cards. They didn't hit anything cool, but my friend and my partner hit an overnumbered. I didn't, but I was there for a good time, so I had fun. But anyways, check me out on Etsy. I have digital art there for streamers, creators. I also have a coffee with free resources like a free sponsorship guide, and I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. and Thursdays at 7:30, a podcast with my friend PST. I hope to catch y'all there or in another video.